All right, welcome everyone to the June Board of Supervisors meeting. We're going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, and we are going to start out tonight with a swearing in of a new police officer and a special acknowledgement from our police department. And I'm going to hand things over to Lieutenant Moyer.
Thank you, Dr. Gussie. Members of the board, I'm just making sure we're ready over there. You good? Okay. On behalf of Superintendent Beatty and the Tredyffrin Township Police Department, it is my pleasure to present to you our newest police officer tonight, Ms. Kemba Daniels. Officer Daniels is a lifelong resident of Delaware County. She graduated from Newman University in 2016 with a bachelor's degree in English before going on to graduate from the Delaware County Community College Police Academy in 2019. Since that time, she has worked for both the Chester Township Police Department and the East Whiteland Township Police Department. Officer Daniels will spend the next 16 weeks in our field training program, during which she will ride with 3 different officers and be evaluated daily under the direction of our field training coordinator, Sergeant Scott Costa. We're happy to have Officer Daniels join our ranks, and we look forward to her service to our community for what we hope is many years to come. Officer Daniels will be sworn in tonight by District Judge Mackenzie Smith. So if you guys want to step forward. And Kemba, if you want to bring a family member to hold. Do we have a Bible? Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, Ryan.
Oh, thank you.
On this side?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, that's okay. You want them to come up?
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Actually, you should be holding this. I'm very loud, and it's your words that are more important. I'm just so you're going to face me? Just let me know when you're all ready.
I think we're ready.
Okay. It's so nice to meet you. I'm Judge Smith. Normally I just say a couple words, so just a couple because I know there's an agenda. Thank you so much for choosing a career in public service. It's very important. You're not necessarily an influencer raking in billions of dollars off of ad sales, right? But you're an influencer in a much more important way. Someone once said we're at our best when we serve others. This is a career that, it's not an easy career, it's a career that demands a lot of sacrifice, but it's one of the few that truly allows you the opportunity to be your best every single day. So I hope you take that with you, and with that, please place your hand on the Bible and repeat after me. I, Kemba Daniels,
I, Kemba Daniels,
being duly appointed a member of Tredyffrin Township Police Department,
being duly appointed a member of Tredyffrin Township Police Department,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania,
and the laws and ordinances of Tredyffrin Township,
and the laws and ordinances of Tredyffrin Township,
that I will at all times
that I will at all times
maintain true faith and allegiance
maintain true faith and allegiance
to the same,
to the same,
that I will obey the lawful orders
that I will obey the lawful orders
of duly appointed officers senior to me,
of duly appointed officers senior to me,
and that I will discharge the duties of police officer of Tredyffrin Township.
and that I would discharge the responsibilities
Very good. Of police officer of Tredyffrin Township
of police officer of Tredyffrin Township
with loyalty and fidelity.
with loyalty and fidelity.
I also solemnly swear
I also solemnly swear
that I will uphold, obey, and enforce the law
that I will uphold, obey, and enforce the law
without consideration to a person's race,
without consideration to a person's race,
color,
color,
gender,
gender,
religious creed,
religious creed,
sexual orientation,
sexual orientation,
age,
age,
national origin,
national origin,
ancestry,
ancestry,
handicap or disability,
handicap, or disability,
and that I will discharge the duty with loyalty and fidelity.
and that I will discharge the duty with loyalty and fidelity.
Congratulations, officer. Go back here to actually sign it. Does this go to someone up here? Yep. Thank you all for having me.
All right, and I believe we also have a special acknowledgement. Lieutenant Moyer?
Dr. Gussie, members of the board, at this time, on behalf of Superintendent Beatty and the entire police department, I would like to acknowledge the passing of retired Superintendent of Police Thomas H. Baynard. Chief Baynard passed away peacefully in his Exton residence on June 13th at the age of 91. While I personally never had the opportunity to serve under Chief Baynard's command, he was by all accounts a very progressive chief who set high standards for his officers and developed a culture for his police department that prioritized the need for constant training and demanded the highest form of professionalism. That same culture that he developed many years ago still exists today. Chief Baynard graduated from Phoenixville High School in 1950, after which he served in the United States Navy during the Korean War before being honorably discharged in 1955. Following his naval career, he joined the Radnor Township Police Department in 1958 before transitioning to the Tredyffrin Township Police Department in 1965. In 1975, Chief Baynard was promoted to the superintendent's position and led the department until his retirement in 1991. Chief Baynard graduated from the FBI National Academy's 91st session and held several positions throughout his career with multiple police organizations in Chester County and beyond. Chief Baynard is survived by his wife, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I now call to order a public hearing to consider and possibly adopt Ordinance H.R. 467 to prohibit parking on Continental Boulevard. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you, Dr. Gussie. I have marked the following board exhibits for the hearing this evening. Board Exhibit 1 is the proof of publication of the notice of the hearing in the Daily Local News on June 9th, 2023. Board Exhibit 2 is the proof of publication of the notice of the hearing in the Mainline Suburban Times on June 11th, 2023. Board Exhibit 3 is the email sent to the public hearing distribution list regarding the notice of the hearing, dated June 15th, 2023. And Board Exhibit 4 is a draft of the ordinance itself, which is under consideration for the board this evening. Those are the board exhibits for this hearing.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion to adopt Ordinance H.R. 467?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Yes, second.
Any board comment? Any public comment? All right, hearing none, this is a roll call vote. Supervisor Miller?
Aye.
Supervisor Humble?
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki?
Aye.
Supervisor Basker?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries, and I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you. All right, and now we move to announcements. There will be a special joint meeting of Tredyffrin and Easttown Township's Board of Supervisors on July 31st at 7 p.m. for the Fire EMS study presentation. The Board of Supervisors meeting scheduled for August 21st will be rescheduled for August 28th. In observance of Independence Day, Township offices will be closed Tuesday, July 4th. And finally, There are open positions on the Municipal Authority, Park and Recreation Board, Zoning Hearing Board, Library Foundation Board, and Parks and Recreation Foundation Board. If you're interested in volunteering, please send a letter of interest and a brief resume to the Township. We move to the approval of minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 22nd, 2023 public meeting?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Moving to Township business, prior to this meeting, our board met in executive session to discuss personnel and real estate matters. Now we have supervisor liaison reports. Supervisor Miller.
Thank you. The Zoning Hearing Board met on the 25th of May to discuss an application for 319 Croton Road. They would like to build a garage in the front of the house instead of in the back. There's an existing garage in the front already. They're really relocating it, removing some impervious surface. It's a historic house that they're trying to really modernize some of the driveway situation and reduce some of the stormwater flooding issues they're having. The decision will be announced this Thursday on the 22nd, which is the next Zoning Hearing Board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Humble.
Thank you. The Parks and Recreation Board met on June the 14th, and among regular reports that we received regarding police reports on the parks, public works reports on the parks, and the Parks and Recreation report on ongoing activities, we also heard an update from an Easttown resident who has presented a disc golf proposal. To refresh everyone's memory, previously he had approached the Township last year about broadening the existing disc golf in Wilson Farm Park to be a larger 9-hole or 18th hole. That idea really didn't go anywhere, mainly for how much of the trees and brush in the wooded area would have to be cut down, as well as for effects on stormwater and other environmental effects noted by the EAC regarding that location. So he has now come back to the Parks and Rec Committee talking about putting disc golf into Mill Road Park. So it was just a brief presentation and only with a cost to someone who might design the course. Still didn't include any costs for clearing the land or ongoing maintenance or for the feasibility of putting such a plan in place at Mill Road Park. Next, the committee had a very detailed presentation from the Dog Park Committee reporting about putting a dog park into Friendship Park, where they had done a great deal of research as to open area that could be viable for that, number of parking places, availability of water, and such. It was met well, and while the committee does not yet have any recommendation about funding, they would like to make a report to the Board of Supervisors about this idea. So hopefully we could get that scheduled for perhaps July or August. That's really the balance of items that were considered. The date of the next meeting is July 12th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Wysocki.
Thank you, Chair Gussie. The Planning Commission met on June 15th. Commission listened to applicant presentations, discussed each application, and heard citizen comments on 4 applications. The Planning Commission had also reviewed each of these applications at previous meetings. First, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to grant final land development approval to the Delaware Valley Friends School for the school's expansion of its campus facilities at 19 East Central Avenue. Second, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to grant final land development approval for a new single-family twin home on vacant land at 958 Mount Pleasant Avenue. Third, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to grant preliminary final land development approval for a 197-unit Lifetime Living branded apartment building immediately adjacent to and to be operated in conjunction with the existing Lifetime Athletic Club at the southeast corner of Sweetser Road and Old Eagle School Road. The apartment building and related improvements will be developed in accordance with the township's recently enacted compatible multifamily dwelling or apartment ordinance HR 461. Lastly, the Planning Commission heard a presentation by the Tredyffrin Easttown School District on the district's plans to construct 3 new athletic fields and related improvements, parking areas, and access drives on 2 district parcels, distinct also, to be consolidated at 200 Irish Road and 250 Cassatt Road. The Commission and the school district agreed that the district should resubmit revised plans for consideration at a later meeting or later meetings. The next meeting of the Planning Commission is on July 20th. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Basker.
So the Environmental Advisory Council meeting scheduled for May 23rd did not happen because we got there and found that there was not going to be a quorum, so the meeting didn't happen, but there was general discussion. Also, this is not a direct report on a meeting of the EAC, but I happened to visit Maisie B. Hall Park yesterday with some EAC members and a resident, and I was quite shocked at the invasive knotweed which is there in the park. And this is a weed that Penn State Extension says is extremely nasty. It takes years to control, and it certainly is not an ornamental plant, but it's taking over large sections of the park. So this is something that the township is going to have to deal with. But anyway, it was new to me. I saw it for the first time yesterday, and it came as a shock to me. Moving on to the next meeting of the Environmental Advisory Council will be Tuesday, June 27th, in the community room next door. Moving on to the Library Board of Trustees. The Library Board of Trustees met on Thursday, May 25th, and continuing the trend, we have a general increase in people coming through the door and in circulation of materials. It's still not up to pre-pandemic levels, but it's a steady increase, which is good. And the e-material circulation rate continues to go up significantly. So I'm not going to get into details, but that's just an ongoing trend. The Tredyffrin and Easttown Library Boards of Trustees had an ice cream social at Handel's that was well attended, and looks like everyone had some fun. So that was probably something they will continue. They've been continuing to have hiring is an ongoing challenge. And also the Friends of Paoli had their second book sale. The Friends of Paoli has not been very active, unlike the Friends of Tredyffrin Public Library, but they had their second book sale, and I guess it was successful. Now, the next meeting of the Library Board of Trustees will be this Thursday, and it will be that's June 22nd, and it will be at the Stratford Library. There's a mistake in the newsletter which said that it was the Paoli Library, but it will be in Stratford. Basically, the Paoli Library is used as a venue just for 2 meetings a year because the space there is very tight. And moving on to the Traffic Committee, it will meet in this room at 7:30 tomorrow morning. So if you have any issues with traffic, please come and discuss them with the township staff and the police department. Thank you, Dr. Gussie.
Thank
Can I
you.
ask a question, Chair Gussie? Supervisor Basker, I'm sorry if I didn't hear it, or maybe you didn't say it, but what is the name of that weed that you said is turned up in the township?
Knotweed, as in, knots, knotweed.
Knots?
Yeah,
Okay.
so if you look at it, it looks like miniature bamboo, except it's a lot tougher than bamboo, and and apparently, and again, this is from what I've heard, that apparently if you happen to take one of those knots with you, or you throw it in like a compost pile or something like that, then it can just take over, and so it's one of the most pernicious invasives.
Is it, I know there's other weeds that are invasives that, it's similar to like poison ivy. Like it looks like it's dill growing or like it's a flower, but actually it burns you just like poison ivy and poison oak. And
No, this doesn't burn or anything like that, as far as I know, unless you happen
so
to
it's
be.
just really invasive, but
It's
it's
just
not
really invasive. And
dangerous.
just go down to Macy Hall Park and kind of walk the perimeter of the park,
Okay,
and you'll see how it is taking over.
thank you.
All right. We will move to the motion to accept recommendation from Finance Committee to reject earned income tax as a source of revenue. As you may recall, our board authorized staff to participate jointly in an EIT study initiated by Easttown Township at our March meeting this year. Finding sustainable and continuous funding for fire EMS is central to the long-term stability of our emergency services. We've also heard an overwhelming public demand to spend more on stormwater management. And EIT had the potential to be a possible financial approach to consider, and I'm grateful that we have the data and information now around an EIT as we work through our future funding plans. The Finance Committee reviewed the presentation on the findings from the consultant, and at this point, the committee is recommending to not take further action on the study or implementation of an EIT for Tredyffrin Township. The committee felt that the potential impacts to residents and businesses would negate the potential revenue. While we do recognize that we will still have to secure funding, this approach doesn't feel to be the right one at this time, or the most direct way to fund our most pressing needs of fire EMS and stormwater. The presentation is available on our website for anyone to review and explore in detail. And with that, I will entertain a motion. Do we have a motion?
Moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any board comment?
Yes, Dr. Gussie. So, firstly, I want to say that this is a non-resolution in the sense that we don't have an EIT today, and this is basically saying that we're not going to have an EIT. So it's not terribly meaningful that way. And if we were to have an EIT at some point, we would obviously have to go through a lot of detail. So the way that I see this resolution is that, we commissioned the study to get us some raw data. And we have some excellent raw data at this point. And what we're saying is that we have the data, but at this point, we're not going to take any action based on that data other than it's data that will act as a source of information for the future. Because I remember that when we earlier discussed it in the context of stormwater, Supervisor Holt had some concerns that we didn't have proper data. Well, now we have data which we can use to make decisions in the future. So at this point, the resolution is basically saying we're not going to do anything.
Any other board comments?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I agree with the Finance Committee, and I accept the recommendation to reject the EIT at this time. I would vote no if it were up at this point. I looked at the data, and a couple of things did hit me, and I thought about the people. I thought about our residents, and I thought to myself, wow, this would put a new heavy burden of taxation on Tredyffrin residents who have earned income but do not now pay EIT in another jurisdiction. So that would be a tremendously heavy jolt in terms of taxation. I also looked at the possible effects on retaining and attracting new business, keeping business or attracting new business, and also keeping employees and attracting employees. And I said, wow, those two issues with the residents and with our township economy, to me, made a big difference today and moved me to accept the Finance Committee's recommendation and oppose the earned income tax at this time. So.
Thank you. Any other board comments?
Yes, Dr. Gussie. When we had considered EIT last year, maybe the year before, I had stated then that I was opposed to it. I'm opposed to it for the reason that many people who live in our township and who have moved their businesses here or opened new businesses here do so because the EIT does not exist here in Tredyffrin. And I think that's a special part of our township that we offer, and just because other townships around us tax people on their earned income does not mean that we should do it too. The data that we looked at showed that there was a huge percentage of residents in Tredyffrin who do not currently pay an EIT to other jurisdictions, and I think that would be very harsh to now force an EIT upon them when they didn't have one before. I appreciate residents who've said, well, I pay an EIT to this other jurisdiction, so I'd be just as happy for it to come home and stay in my residential township. You know, we appreciate that, but to me, that's not enough to order an EIT on everybody else who may not be paying one now. And another thing is, I think our township and our land here is extremely valuable. And if the difference is made up in real estate tax, well, to me that's okay because we're already paying such a low rate of income tax compared to other townships in this area and other jurisdictions. So I just want to state my position there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, I have a few comments. I'm opposed, in case anyone's wondering. I know it's a small crowd, but I'm opposed to an EIT, and you probably knew that. But I ran on keeping taxes low, implementing a stormwater fee, and implementing sustainable funding for our fire companies. And EIT doesn't accomplish that for a couple of reasons. One is we know that a stormwater we need about, we've been working on this for about 5 years at this point. We know stormwater we need about $2.4 million a year for the next 5 years, plus funding after that. And we know the best way to collect that money is through an impervious surface-based fee on all the impervious surfaces in the township. For fire, we know that we need between $2 and $2.5 million about, and there's going to be another hearing or another study reported back in July this year about that. But there, the best way, in my opinion, is with dedicated fire tax. The residents then know what they're paying for fire, and the fire companies, both Paoli and Berwyn, know what they're getting. So that seems like the best way to implement that. We do need between 4 and 5 million if you just add up those numbers. That's sort of what you get to. The EIT, if anyone's has a chance to look at the study, at a 0.5 point generates $3.5 million for the township. At about 1%, which is what it would be implemented, is $26 million, 26.9. So these are massive numbers from the township for this EIT. Second reason is commercial real estate. I think people have talked about the fact that we have about 44,000 people who work in the township. None of them are paying EIT to our township today. Of those 6,000 there are 6,000 residents who would be taxed that are currently not taxed, and there's 7,000 workers who are in the township who would be taxed. And commercial real estate, anyone who reads the paper knows, is under a lot of pressure from both because of work from home, so the rental income is going down, or a lot of pressure on the rental income side, and on the refinancing side. When you finance a commercial building, you don't do a 30-year fixed amortizing mortgage. It's between 5 and 7 and 12 years. And it's interest only typically. So these mortgages, when they come up to be refinanced, are going to be in a dramatically higher interest rate environment. We suspect, and Bill probably knows, that we're going to have people who own commercial buildings in this township coming to the township asking for lower appraisals and lower tax rates as a result. So we need to do everything we can to promote business in our township, because that is part of what keeps our taxes low. And the last thing is we just don't need the money. We added up needs of 4 to 5-ish million and income of 13.5 on a budget of 25 million. It's just a massive amount of money. And there's nobody in the audience who's coming to us saying we need to spend $6 million on something every year. So And taxes are a zero-sum game. I mean, it's money that's in someone's pocket that we are then going to take and spend for everybody's benefit in some way, shape, or form. And this is, the average amount would be $1,500 per person. That's $1,500 somebody could spend on a vacation, pay down, a laptop for school, credit cards, 529 plan. I mean, there's a lot of stuff people can do with that money as opposed to the township. So we just don't need the money because there's no needs for it. So that's why I'm pretty adamantly opposed to a EIT in Tredyffrin Township. I do want to add, though, on this, we don't need the money part. I don't want people to think that the township isn't really careful with how they spend the money. Like Bill and Joe and Darren and Steve and Aaron are super careful on how they spend the township's money. I mean, they spend it like it's their own. So I wouldn't be opposed to, if we needed to spend money, taxing more and trusting our township staff to spend wisely. Oh, Chief Beatty, who's not here, sorry, is careful too. So, but you should feel good about how we spend the money, but we just don't need this at this time. So that's it, thanks.
All right, and I do have a statement that I'm going to read from Supervisor Holt, who could not be here tonight. He says that he apologizes for not being able to be here in person. He believes this motion is premature, and he encourages the board to table it until further strategic review of township priorities can take place. A 0.5% EIT can resolve all the township's many funding issues, including but not limited to fire, stormwater, filling out the traffic division in the police department, improving our crumbling library and fully staffing it, closing the fiscal gap in our budget, which currently necessitates significant reserve use, funding capital projects, and fixing our understaffed public works department. Further, it is likely we could even reduce the real estate tax should we implement an EIT. The amounts that could be generated from this small 0.5% tax are big. That is approximately $9 to $13 million a year. According to the EIT study, 58% of Tredyffrin's working residents currently already pay an EIT or Philly wage tax. Tredyffrin residents pay $6.3 million to other municipalities in the area, money that could stay right here in Tredyffrin. Retired seniors that do not have earned income would not be impacted by this tax. If not an EIT, the inevitable large real estate tax hikes, fire and stormwater taxes proposed will hit our seniors very hard. Now is the time for action before our commercial real estate tax revenues take a major hit during reassessments in the next couple years when that bubble bursts. A 0.5% EIT is the simple, practical solution to fix Tredyffrin's fiscal woes and will enable the township to deliver excellent services, not merely services that are barely sufficient. This funding mechanism will enable us to make Tredyffrin the township we all want it to be. So that is the statement from Supervisor Holt. Do we have any other board comments? All right, moving to public comments. Do we have any public comments?
Okay, so there were probably about 250 residents there, and a couple things that I thought were interesting was at least in one of the prior meetings, when the consultant made his presentation of the data, he said that someone was saying it was such great data, and he said actually the data is not really very accurate. There's not a way to pull the data from reliable sources, and the other concern was that a lot of the data was from 2020, and some of it was from 2022, so there's a bit of a disconnect between, especially given, there was employment data which showed 5,100 people worked in East Town or 4,300 or somewhere in between. So with the major changes in working from home, I think that has changed the way people work and the number of employees in the township in ways that are probably not reflected in the data that the consultant was able to get. But I didn't have the opportunity to take a look at his report yet. for Tredyffrin. I think Mr. Miller, I appreciated his point. To raise $13 million to meet a need of $5 million is, money in search of something to spend it on, in my view. And I think that it's the township's responsibility, and I think that you all have articulated it, to spend the money wisely, not just spend money, whatever money comes in, on things that may or may not deliver a dollar's worth of value for the residents for every dollar that you spend. The other observation that I will make about the meetings in Easttown is I think it's been everyone's impression that folks that are retired or approaching retirement would be very much in favor of an earned income tax. And I would say a large number, the number of people who commented, and in fact, there were probably 40 or 50 people who commented at the meeting and no one commented in favor of an earned income tax. But what was somewhat surprising to a lot of people, I think, was there were a large number of folks who commented and who were actually retired or near retirement and were not in favor of the earned income tax. They felt that that one of the beauties of this community has been that the government services have been supported by taxpayers across the age spectrum, across the income spectrum, that everyone is invested in what we do here with their tax dollars. I think that, as it applied to emergency services, there was a sentiment in favor of support of the emergency services, understanding that there's a logical connection between what you pay in real estate taxes and the fact that the fire department protects your property. So if you live in a valuable property, then your taxes are going to go up a little more, and the fire department is protecting a property that's more valuable. So I think that logical connection really resonated with a lot of taxpayers. And I think that, that to the surprise of some folks, the retirees seemed to be comfortable with this and understood that everybody should be expected to bear the burden of the increased costs that we have in some specific high priority areas. So I guess what I'd like to say is I'm in favor of the motion, and I appreciate the comments. And I guess we'll look forward to the budgetary process when you all will let us know what the plan is for the other items. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? All right, we will move to the vote. All in favor say aye. 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 Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we move to the motion to approve proposal from Michael Baker for engineering design inspection services related to the Glen Hardy Road North Emergency Bridge Replacement Project. Mr. Burgo.
Madam Chair and members of the board, before you tonight is a proposal from Michael Baker International for engineering services for the Glen Hardy Road Bridge North over Trout Creek for the replacement. On a little bit of history here, on April 4th of 2023, Michael Baker conducted an emergency inspection on behalf of the township for this bridge. We have two different bridges located over Trout Creek on Glen Hardy Road. This particular bridge is the one closest to the intersection of Richards Road. It's immediately up gradient of the Richards Road culvert, and it's located on the main branch of Trout Creek. Residents and township officials know this bridge pretty well. It's one of the ones where the creek backs up during large events and kind of overtops the road and flows down Richards Road. During the inspection, we found some items of substantial concern with the structure. There was a crack and some basically separation in some of the stone in the left spandrel portion of the wall of the bridge. And Michael Baker had come back to us with a bunch of recommendations for emergency actions for the township to take. So since that time, we closed one lane of the bridge. We placed barriers and signs on the bridge structure to restrict resident access to only one side, on the downstream side. We reduced the weight carrying capacity of the structure down to 3 tons, which basically allows us to have access for cars and pickup trucks only. And we've basically put some rock riprap protection that the Public Works had placed on the upstream side to try to put some armoring on there to protect it for some larger storm events. We had some discussion with the fire companies about emergency access, and we had a meeting with the Turnpike as well, who's doing work and has that portion of Glen Hardy Road closed immediately to the south of here, where the Turnpike crosses over Glen Hardy Road, about sharing some access underneath there during their construction for larger trucks and emergency vehicles. Township Engineering Department, we met with Michael Baker, staff. We also went with the contractor out there who has experience in stone masonry arch bridges. We looked at some possibilities of doing some repair or rehabilitation to the bridge. And we did determine after meeting with them that it would be a pretty extensive rehabilitation process to make that bridge safe again, and it would be a fairly substantial cost. So that was one option that we had ruled out. And we basically came to the understanding that we would need to replace the structure. So before you tonight, we have a proposal from Michael Baker. It covers pretty much from start to finish the survey, design. There's a lot of hydraulic and hydrologic analysis that goes along with this. This is a complex structure. It's probably undersized given its location in the watershed. It's immediately below in the watershed, below the turnpike culvert, and it is upstream of Richards Road. It's been subject to a lot of flooding. It's in a FEMA floodplain zone, so we need to do a lot of analysis to determine the right sizing. Hopefully we'll be able to upgrade the potential bridge structure to allow more flow to make through the new structure, less water onto the road at that location, and we also have to take into consideration future projects such as the Richards Road Bridge, if and when that potentially would be replaced. Includes permitting and structural design, final plans, and bid package development. The cost of their proposed services are $370,655. Just as a couple things, this was something that came up as an emergency. Previously, it was identified in the capital budget in the plan for 2027, so it was out several years into the future. So there is not funding that was currently identified. We did discuss that with the township manager and the assistant manager and finance director. So we're here. We can answer any questions of the board tonight before you consider this.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any board comments or questions?
So I have a question for Engineer Berger, which is, this is an emergency damage that is observed, and possibly because of heavy vehicles moving on the bridge that were not anticipated, because we expected to have the bridge to have a lifetime of a few more years hence. So I guess I have a two-part question. One is that, with the current emergency state of just one lane on the bridge, that hopefully will prevent further deterioration of the structure. That is the intent.
It's twofold. The intent was that the upstream portion is the portion that's closed. That's where the cracking and separation was identified in the upstream arch. So to reduce loading of that as much as possible from vehicles, and then the capacity reduction on the bridge. We had a weight limit reduction to 3 tons. That itself would help because we're basically reducing the ability of trucks and other heavy vehicles from going over it.
And the other concern is, since this is by definition, a bridge is sort of in a floodplain, even if it's not actually sitting in the floodplain. Since this is the closed part is on the upstream side, as I recall, or is it the downstream? What is the potential for like a heavy storm with a lot of water, basically causing damage to the bridge and causing it to be closed?
I mean, the bridge, it's because it's a stone arch structure. Anytime we get a large storm, that bridge today, in the past, has been subject to a lot of loading on the upstream side. It gets debris, tree trunks, leaf debris, sticks. A lot of things would get stuck on that upstream side. Some of it would wash through in some of the bigger storms. Some of it would be removed afterwards from Public Works. It would be weather dependent. If we do have some very large storms, it could be more severely impacted in the short term, where we would have to basically continue to monitor the structure as we're moving through the design process and just keep an eye on it.
Okay, that was sort of what I was leading towards, which is also that because even if we go through this design process and construction, unfortunately, I have misplaced my magic wand, and we can't just sort of magically make a new bridge appear. So it's going to take at least probably, I would guess optimistically, a year before it's replaced, and probably longer. And so this means that we have to sort of have backup plans in place for, frequent inspections, and then if we do have to close it, we have to close it, and then we have to have a plan for emergency vehicles and other traffic.
We would. I mean, I think that we've talked to Berwyn Fire Company about their access to the structure. There's 5 homes that are located on the other side of the creek between the turnpike and the structure. We've talked to the turnpike because the township is allowing the turnpike to use the township road underneath the bridge as they're doing their improvements. So let's say the worst case scenario, we had a very large or series of large storms and the bridge became unsafe, and it was determined through inspection that it's unsafe, we can't have vehicles on it. We would close the structure completely. We would actually use our power that we have. We can actually kick the turnpike off of our road, and they would access their construction project via the roadway, and that would be out of necessity to make sure that we have access, both regular access for those residents and for emergency vehicles and normal everyday activities. There may be some compromise where we might be able to do some work on the turnpike, but we have that option if we really need it to do.
Oh, thank you. It looks like we don't really have any great options, but we're moving rationally forward. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just as to say, is this bridge we had been looking at this bridge as well as we have another bridge to the south of here, closer to Walker Road, and we were planning for this, but it was several years out into the future. So this is a little unexpected, but it's something that we have to address.
All right.
Sorry, one last question, which is that the proposal literally this is a fairly expensive proposal, so we're actually talking about everything all the way to where we can actually bid a construction project.
Yes, that is correct.
All right, any other board comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? All right.
We have one virtual.
Oh, Mr. Clark.
Hello. Just a quick question. I'm wondering if there's any grant funding for either the design work or eventual construction here.
Ray, at this point, there is no grant funding that's identified. It is something that we can always look at maybe for the construction, but I don't say there's anything available for the design at this point in time.
Thanks. Oh, and do you have a sense of how much a new bridge would cost?
I would say at this point, we're not sure of the total cost, but we had estimated, I think, for this bridge as well as the other bridge on Glen Hardy in the 5-year capital, I think we had a $3 million total for both of the structures to be replaced.
Thanks.
All right, any other public questions? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-18, authorizing reimbursement to the township from the proceeds of debt for capital expenditures and costs of issuance, temporarily funded from revenues or other sources. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This resolution just simply allows the township to reimburse itself for costs that we're just approved to incur, specifically related to the Glen Hardy Road Bridge. Should the board consider a bond issuance in the short, in the near term. So nothing binding doesn't mean that we have to issue the bonds. It just means that if we do issue bonds and we seek funding for this project, we can reimburse ourselves after the fact. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comments?
Thank you, Mr. Duraco. You actually answered my question before I asked it.
Any other board comments? Any public comments? All right, hearing none. I'm sorry. All right. This is actually a roll call vote, so I'm glad I messed up there so I could slow down. All right, Supervisor Miller.
Aye.
Supervisor Humble.
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki.
Aye.
Supervisor Basker.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. All right, next we have a motion to reject bid from Moore Brothers Enterprises for court resurfacing in Wilson Farm Park. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Tonight, the staff is recommending rejecting the bid from Moore Brothers for the resurfacing of the basketball courts in Wilson. They provided an incomplete bid. In addition to that, during some due diligence, staff had concerns. Therefore, there's our recommendation.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Any board comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? All right. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to award bid for court resurfacing in Wilson Farm Park to T. Schaefer Contractors, Inc. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Staff is seeking authorization from the board for the resurfacing project of the basketball courts at Wilson Farm Park. The project will consist of removing 1.5 inches of asphalt and replacing it with 1.5 inches of asphalt. On June 6, 2023, Tredyffrin Township received 5 bids through Penn Bid. T. Schaefer Contractors for $65,002, Gorcon Inc. $67,135.82, Kessler Construction for $73,043, Jenna Asphalt Solutions for $87,225.75, and Moore Brothers, whose bid was just rejected. T. Schaefer Contractors was the lowest qualified bid, and we are recommending them for the project at Wilson Farm Park. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comments? Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to approve the proposal from the Brenneman Company for the Wilson Farm Park basketball court painting. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Staff is seeking authorization from the board for the basketball courts at Wilson Farm Park to be the epoxy painting and the line painting. We recommend using Brenneman Company for $28,600. We've used them numerous times in the past. They've always done a great job. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comment? Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to approve sale of excess vehicles and equipment. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. At our at an earlier board meeting, the board authorized us to sell this list of excess vehicles and equipment. In total, the sales are bringing back $53,426 to the township's capital reserve. I'm happy to answer any question.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comment?
Yeah, actually more of a question, which is I noticed that for a prisoner cage, we didn't get anyone bidding. So what happens to that? Does it go in the landfill or does it get melted down or what happens?
I believe they're plastic, so we will make sure they get recycled.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any public comments or questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to approve purchase of Public Works Director truck. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Staff is requesting approval for an F-350 Ford Crew Cab 4x4 to be used by the Public Works Director. This truck will be added to the fleet, and the current director's truck will be used by the foreman, thereby putting his truck into the fleet. The current foreman's truck, which has a rear lift gate, is used more by the crew than it is by the foreman, so most of the time the foreman doesn't have any tools with him. The cost of this truck from New Holland Ford is $65,531, and the plow and accessories from Lancaster Truck Bodies for no more than $8,000. Both of these purchases will be through CoStars and were included in the 2023 budget. The only thing we're not sure of with supply shortages, it's entirely possible that we won't get this vehicle till next year. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comments? Any public comments?
I'm sorry, there was one board comment, which is that, someday I hope that we'll be able to get electric vehicles for township use, but I realize that we're not quite in a position to where we can do that because we don't have the infrastructure for charging it yet. But that is something that I hope will be happening by and by.
Thank you. Do we have any other board comments or public comments? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to authorize staff to issue RFP for land development and subdivision engineering services. Ms. McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Yes, we would like to put out a RFP for new engineering services. The last time that we did this was 2018, and before that it was 2013. So about every 5 years we like to kind of test the market, obviously, get a competitive process to get engineering consultants this is for the land development and zoning reviews as part of the Planning Commission. So we're requesting approval.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Any board comment? Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to authorize Township Manager to execute documents related to an AFSCME personnel matter. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is straightforward. This is an agreement between a member of the AFSCME bargaining unit and the Township, just asking your authorization for allowing me to execute the documents.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Any board comment? Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to approve the following escrow releases. Final release in the amount of $28,187 for 1237 Lancaster Avenue, balance remaining $0, and release number 3 for Devon Prep in the amount of $396,414.80, balance remaining $140,198.64. Mr. Burgo.
Madam Chair and members of the board, the following two releases that are on this evening for 1237 Lancaster, a final release. That project has been completed, inspected, and recommended for full release tonight, as well as Devon Prep for release number 3. They've completed the stormwater underneath their proposed turf field. They've recently completed the turf field and continue to work on upgrades to their existing stormwater basin and stabilization to the surrounding area and building. So we have inspected and we're recommending the release in the dollars that are identified tonight.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comments? Any public comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Now we move to new matters, and I will start off board member new matters tonight. I wanted to mention that we have been receiving complaints from residents about their trash and recycling services by their contracted providers. We have discussed in the past the idea of moving to a single hauler for Tredyffrin Township to potentially improve the rates and services for our residents, to reduce the number of trucks and make the routes more efficient, improve noise, pollution, wear and tear, etc. So I was just hoping that we could maybe have an update tonight on where we are in that process and maybe a timeline for moving towards a single hauler. Mr. Duraco?
Happy to do that. A couple of us on staff have been working quite hard to pull together an RFP in this case. So over the last couple of months, we've met with Easttown, we've met with Euclid, who are two of the municipalities that have been, that have had single hauler for quite some time, and so just trying to gain some knowledge from them. We have their RFPs that they've issued, and so we've taken that and have been working on one for Tredyffrin. We're actually at the point where we're ready to send it to the EIC to just get their last comments. We've been touching base with them from time to time to get feedback into what to include. So that'll be going to them, hopefully for their June meeting for their last comments. At that point, I'll send it to the board to review ahead of our July meeting, which I'll ask for authorization to send the RFP out. I've sent our draft to the solicitor's office. I've been working with Ellen, and she provided me with a ton of comments, so I've cleaned that up today and just making some final tweaks. So I'm hoping that after July, we'll have pre-bid meeting in August. Bids will be due in August. Award potentially a bid in September, which gives us about 100 days to really push the education and the information out to the residents, and potentially have this ready to go for 1/1 of '24. We know that there's going to take a lot to get the word out. So one of the things that I have included, and again, I'll get into the detail now, but we'll discuss it again next month, is we're going to have two approaches in our bid spec. One will be where the hauler will bill and collect, and then another price for if the township bills and collects. And just so that way we know what the difference is. And so, but yes, to your point, we've gotten a ton of calls in the last week, and so we're hoping to address those moving forward.
Thank you. Do we have any other board member new matters tonight? Do we have any citizen new matters tonight?
My new matter is a quick comment on your new matter, Chair Gussie, which is to say that my strong recommendation would be that the township not bill and collect. I would think that if the township were billing and collecting for this, you own the service at that point in the minds of the residents, and you'd probably need a call center staffed by 50 people to deal with a crisis like what the trash companies are going through right now. I also have some serious concerns about the financial viability of whoever's going to apply for this contract. There's been a lot of consolidation. There's two providers in the township right now. Neither of them seem to be very reliable, frankly, from the reports that I hear. So I would be very cautious about who gets the contract and can they fulfill it. So, I mean, I think it's a reasonable initiative, but I wouldn't want the township to be in a position where all of a sudden the contractor isn't able to make the collections, and then what does the township do? So, but thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clark?
Hello, just a quick comment with my Open Land Conservancy hat on, just to acknowledge the help from Mr. Fitzgerald and the township paving contractor, Glasgow, in providing us with some of the millings that they scoop off the tops of the road as part of the repaving project to eventually, and we have to do some work here, eventually improve the entrances to a couple of preserved parking lots. And I just want to say, how much we appreciate the help from both Mr. Fitzgerald and the contract have been really a great assistance to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen new matters tonight? All right, our next meeting is July 17th. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that concludes our meeting. Thanks, everybody.